Oh my gosh. Are you ready? All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual meetup. My name is Liz Obermeyer. I'm the operations manager for DigitalCrafts. And then we also have Chris Aquino over here. He is one of our immersive instructors. We're happy you can be with us tonight. So if you do not already know, DigitalCrafts is a top-rated coding bootcamp. We have campuses in both Atlanta and Houston. And we offer full-stack programs, both full-time and part-time as well. So for tonight's meetup, we are going to be building our own chatbot. It's going to be very simple. This program is catered towards beginners. We're going to be utilizing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you are more advanced, feel free to run with this program as well. So we'll give you some good ideas. Really, this is a great workshop for anyone wanting to learn a little bit more about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or even prepare for our code challenge here at DigitalCrafts for the admissions process. There is a chat option. If you have any questions along the way, we're going to be happy to help you. And we'll let Chris take it from here.
Oh, boy. Hey, everybody. I have a little bit of starter code that you are welcome to use. I will show that now. Oh, here we go. If you need to grab the code, you can go to the website github.com/radishmouse/digitalcrafts-chatbot. There is a link over to the right where it says clone or download. It's the green button over here. You can click that, and then there is an option to download a zip. So if you want to see the code as it will end up, or you need a little help along the way, feel free to grab that and refer to that code. Okay. So, again, this tutorial/meetup, this is going to be geared towards folks who are generally beginners. If you are like super advanced, then feel free to sit back, enjoy the ride. Otherwise, lean in. We're gonna build a thing. It's gonna look a bit like this. This is the DigitalCrafts chatbot thingy that I put together. It's built entirely with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And here's how it works. All right, so we've got some stuff on the screen, the Welcome to DigitalCrafts text. There's also the logo and just a little message window, so I can say, hello, is anyone there, question mark. Click the send button, and then the chatbot responds shortly thereafter. And say, oh, hey. I'm doing quite well. Thank you. So you get the idea. It's just a little bit of interaction. So we'll be touching on each of the major technologies used in browser programming, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All right. So for those of you who do not have something to write some code with, I do recommend grabbing a copy of Visual Studio Code. It is made by Microsoft. It's totally free, and you can use it whether you're on Windows or Mac, or if you're using Linux, you can also use Visual Studio Code there. So without further ado, we're going to switch over to the code editor. And what you're going to want to do is, so I've already created a folder for this, but here you can right click, no you can't, sorry. On Windows you should be able to press Control-O, on the Mac, Command-O, and then you can choose a folder that you can write your code in. I've created one. I'm just going to open that, and then using your text editor, you can create a new file. And so what you're going to want to do is create one called index.html. If you are not familiar, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It dates back to the early 90s, mid 90s-ish. And it was a plain text way to mark up some content so you could publish it on this brand new thing called the World Wide Web. Mostly it was for scientists who decided they wanted to be able to share each other's work, find each other's work, cite each other's work. And then, other things took over. YouTube became a thing, then cats took over the world. So that's the true history of the internet. Cats. Now, if you're using Visual Studio Code, you do have the option of hiding this file explorer. Just click the double file icon in the upper left. That goes away. And now I'm going to show you your first very cool trick using Visual Studio Code. If you're not using Visual Studio Code, grab the zip file and you can grab the index.html as a starter. What I did was I typed an exclamation point and then I pressed tab. And Visual Studio Code knows that if you're in an HTML file, you're going to need a little bit of help because it's a lot of stuff to type out. It can be very tedious. So this is a keyboard shortcut that will fill out an HTML file for you with the bare bones that you need to make a web page. So there's a lot of stuff going on in here. The main part that you're going to care about tonight is sandwiched in between where it says body and then it says body again. So this is an example of an HTML tag. An HTML tag is the way that you designate some piece of text or an image or something else to be displayed a certain way in a web browser. So let's do the canonical first program of that you write when learning a programming language. Let's do hello world. Just type the text hello world and save. On the Mac it is Command S. On Windows it's Control S. You'll notice that the icon in the next to index.html in the tab bar will change from a circle, meaning there are changes that have yet to be saved. We click save, it goes back to an X. An X means, all right, it is good to close, you've saved all the changes. I do want you to go up to the index.html tab. I want you to right click, and then you can say copy path. Once you've done that, I want you to return to the browser, and maybe in a new tab, you can paste. And so this is what you should see. It should say, hello world. It's not super exciting, but you did just in a handful of seconds make a web page. So there's a lot more stuff that we're going to do with it. But for now, hello world it is. Okay, here we go. Back to the code. And again, if you do have questions, just type it into the Twitch chat, please. And I will do my best to address any questions that you've got. So returning to the code, here we are. Let's do this. Let's put a welcome message here. Let's erase over hello world. And I'm going to do a little greeting from DigitalCrafts. What I'm going to type is the less than character. That is shift, comma, H1, and then shift period. Sorry, that's supposed to be an H1 in between the less than and greater than symbols. I'm going to refer to those as angle brackets. And so that is the beginning of what's known as an HTML tag. Pretty much all HTML tags need to be closed. And the way that you do that is by doing the exact same thing as you did before, the less than, greater than. Sandwiched in between is H1, but notice this slash just to the left of the text H1. So it's going to look like this. You got your beginning H1 tag and your closing H1 tag. You can think of those as like chomping around some bit of content. So I'm going to put some content in there. Welcome to DigitalCrafts! Exclamation point. So I'm going to save that. Notice again that next to index.html, the circle has changed back into an X. Let's take a look at our changes. go back to the browser, and then refresh. You can either click the button here that says reload this page, or if you are on Windows, you can type Control R. On the Mac, Command R. Ta-da! Welcome to DigitalCrafts. So inside of, well, it would be better if you could see it. Let's go back to the code. You'll notice that the h1 tag is actually inside of another tag, and that's the body tag. This is where all of your content goes in a web page. There's another tag just above it, and that's the head tag. This is where, as you can sort of tell from scanning through, this is where meta information goes. I'm going to change a bit of meta information about this particular web page. I'm going to change the word document to DigitalCrafts Chatbot. 2 exclamation points there because it's super exciting. Okay, so you should get into the habit of every time you make a change, hit a keyboard shortcut to save, then return to the browser, reload. You might not have noticed anything change, but what happened was the title that we just typed in is now being used for the text here in the tab bar in your browser. That's how they get that text to appear that way on the different web pages that you visit. So returning again to the code. The relationship between the h1 tag and the body tag, this is known as nesting. Tags can be nested inside of each other. It's totally fine. There are lots of different reasons why you want to do this. Sometimes you want to have, in this example, you're just going to have some plain text that's inside of a tag. That's pretty clear. We basically want this one to be an h1. I didn't explain that earlier, but an h1 is a kind of heading. So, or rather, well, heading. There are several headings. You've got h1. Let's do an h2. Yep, this is an h2. Just to show you what these do by default, I'm now going to go back to the browser and reload. And you can see that this text is a little bit smaller, and this is the whole idea. The h1, h2, h3, 4, 5, and 6 tags, those go way back to the beginning of HTML, when it was primarily used for academic documents. So you might introduce a few other tags. There's also a really handy one that I'm going to use in place of the h2. This is a paragraph tag. Notice again that I've got the opening tag, which is just a P inside of 2 angle brackets. And then to close it, I've got a P, or rather a /P inside of a set of angle brackets. This is some very, very important text. Yes, it is. Oops. I meant to switch that. So now you can see where I wrote the opening and closing P tags, and then some text in the middle. Sorry for the delay there. And I wanted to show you the result of using a P tag, also known as a paragraph tag. In the browser, when I reload, it displays that text. And now I'm going to show you one more bit of nesting with the HTML. Actually going to do another paragraph tag. Say this is a link to digitalcrafts.com. So I'm going to take digitalcrafts.com and I'm going to wrap it in what's officially known as an anchor tag, but you'll hear a lot of developers refer to this as just a link. It's just a link because its job is to create a link. Now I'm just going to copy and paste the DigitalCrafts URL. That is, URL is another, it's an acronym that stands for Universal Resource Locator, and it's really just a web address. So we're saying this, this link is supposed to go to the DigitalCrafts website. I put in the address here as the value in between these quotation marks. Notice that I've got this equal sign, and I'm saying, all right, I want, so in layman's terms, this means I want this link to go to the DigitalCrafts website. In developer speak, you might say, I have an anchor tag, and the href is set to the DigitalCrafts web address. And so that href, to disentangle that a little bit more, that stands for hypertext reference. Don't quote me on that because I don't know anybody who actually calls it by its full name, but href. Href it is. Okay. So I've saved. I'm going to return to the browser, switch back to my HTML page, and I'm going to reload. And so here is that text that I've just added as a paragraph tag. This is a link to digitalcrafts.com. And so when I click it, it takes my browser to the DigitalCrafts website. Ta-da! All right, I'm actually just going to hit the back button. That was just a demo to show you a few things. One of those is that you can use as many tags as you need to mark up your content. So I have a thing that I want to be a header, so I use the h1 tag. I need some things to look like paragraphs, separated by white space, so then I'm going to use paragraph tags for those. And finally, you can do nesting inside of your tags. So that I have an anchor tag that's just sort of nested inside of this paragraph tag. Cool. Here's another bit of terminology that I want to introduce you to. So the href part of your anchor tag, that's known as an attribute, an HTML attribute. And so whereas a paragraph is just designed to wrap around some content, your anchor tag needs to refer to something that it's going to link to. And so in HTML, you use HTML attributes for that. Notice these other tags here in the head, this meta information, basically a collection of attributes. And just so I'm not doing too much hand waving, this is meta information for the browser that's telling it how to, things like what language the web page is supposed to be in, how it should display on mobile devices, how it should handle things like compatibility with certain older browsers. But I'm now going to erase the paragraphs, and what I would really like to do is I want to include an image, because what is the internet without images? It's nothing. Nothing. Okay. I feel very strongly about that. So the tag that you're going to use for that is an image tag. And here's another shortcut that you can get from pretty much every text editor that you might be using. You can type the name of the tag and then hit tab. So a cool thing happens, just like we did with the very beginning with the exclamation point and then tabbing. Our text editor will happily fill out the rest. All right, so just the necessary parts, say the attributes that we need. Image tags are interesting because they don't wrap around anything. They really are just going to refer to some image file. And then there's this other thing called the alternate text. Now, this is for people who, not everybody who uses the web has full sight. Some people are like completely blind and they use the web anyway. They have to use the web because there's lots of useful information. And so they're going to use a browser that's actually going to read the screen to them. And without some sort of text here for the alt attribute, they have no idea what the content of an image is. So we're going to help them out. We're going to put something in the alt attribute. Now I'm going to grab a link to the DigitalCrafts logo. So I don't know if you could see that, but I was able to right-click in my browser, and a menu came up that said Open Image in New Tab. In that tab, oh ho ho, it's the DigitalCrafts logo. I'm just going to borrow this. It's fine. It's totally fine. So I'm just going to copy this address. This is the address on the internet for the DigitalCrafts logo. That easy? Yes, yes it is. So jumping back over to the code, I'm just going to paste that in the source attribute. So that's going to go in between the double quotes. All right, we want the source attribute to have the value of all of this text, which is the web address of the DigitalCrafts logo. Now, in the alt text, let's call it DigitalCrafts logo rich. So, if they've never seen the DigitalCrafts logo before, they're not going to know from hearing a screen reader tell them that it's the DigitalCrafts logo anything about what it looks like. So I'm just going to put the word wrench over to the side. So now, save, switch back over to the browser. Here is my web page. I will reload, and oh my goodness. So all of you should now be seeing a gigantic wrench right under Welcome to DigitalCrafts. And so we're going to address this next. So if you don't see a wrench, maybe you need a hand grabbing the wrench, the web address for the wrench. So if you just put your mouse directly on, I know that you can't see my mouse cursor, but it's right on the wrench image, right there at the center of my browser. And then I'm going to right click, and you still cannot see the menu that I see, but your browser will likely have something that says Open Image in New Tab or Copy Image Address, something like that. But I'm going to use the Open Image in New Tab, and another tab opens, and I can look in the address bar of my browser while I'm viewing just the image, and I can see that, yes, this web address refers to the DigitalCrafts logo. And so I was able to copy that and then paste it into my code so that it was part of my web page. Now, I didn't download it to my computer to include it into the web page. I was just referring to something on the internet, and then my browser was able to figure it out. It's using my HTML that I wrote, but I have an image tag in here that refers to this particular file on the internet, and it was just able to put that right into my web page. Pretty cool. All right. Here we go. So let's do something about this being so large and weird, shall we? As you can tell, HTML by itself, it's not very powerful. I mean, you can link to stuff, you can pull in resources from other websites, just like you're pulling in the DigitalCrafts logo. But how do you make a web page look good? It's a great question. I ask myself this frequently because I am not a designer. I only play one during class while I'm teaching. This is what I'd like for you to do next. I want you to put an opening and closing style tag in the head of your HTML. So that's the word style sandwiched in between angle brackets, and then a few lines below /style enclosed in angle brackets. All right, we're gonna fix things up. First, let's address the not so awesome looking text. All right, we're going to write this first, and then I'm going to tell you all about it. So you're going to write HTML, comma, body, and then a pair of curly braces. I'm going to back up a little bit here, and then this is where you're going to start. HTML, comma, body, just like that, with some curly braces, and that should be inside an opening and closing style tag that's here inside the head. I do recommend just put it right below the title. So what we're about to do is we're about to set some styles. That is, how should the web page look? We're giving the browser information about what the web page should look like. That's colors, that's fonts, sizes of things. We can specify all that information here in between the style tag. So next, I am going to put some information here in between the curly braces, and to do that, I made some blank lines, a couple blank lines in between them. And let's say that we want the font family to be sans serif. Your text editor might be providing you with some different suggestions. You might want to take one of those. I was gonna go with boring old sans serif. I may gussy that up a bit in just a moment. But first I wanted to demonstrate that by putting the CSS in here, I will return to this so that you can look at it for longer, but very quickly, I want to check the browser and confirm that that change has taken effect. So I'm going to switch over to the browser, and I'm going to reload. Okay, so welcome to DigitalCrafts is now in a different font than before. Previously, it was this, what's known as a serif font, I think specifically like Times New Roman or whatever else like Microsoft Word uses by default. Not so awesome. This is a little bit better. So what you just did is you wrote your first CSS. So CSS is the second major technology used when writing web pages. So HTML is for formatting your content, right? This is you're controlling the structure, like, oh, okay, I want this image to appear after this heading, and then maybe I've got paragraphs of text, and inside of those, maybe I'm going to add some links, that sort of thing. You're basically setting up the nuts and bolts, the skeletal structure of your web page, but by default, it's not going to look good. So you need to provide some amount of CSS, and that's what we're doing now. So we're saying that for the HTML tag is the thing that wraps around the entire web page. And then I'm saying also for the body, this is me saying definitely by default, I want to apply whatever's in between the curly braces to my entire web page. And that's how I was able to say, all right, I want to set the font family to sans serif. Cool. All right. So you can't go on like this for very long, because what if I had two H1 tags, right? Let's do another one, H1 tag. Yes, hello, hi, how are you? Right? Let's go and, sorry about that. That was totally invisible. I'm just getting used to streaming. Yay! All right, so quick recap. I've got styles here in the style tag that I'm applying to the HTML tag, which wraps the entire web page, the body, which wraps basically the main content of the page. And I'm saying that the font family should be sans serif. But I can't just use tag names. So if I wanted to do like H1 and I wanted to set the color to something like cornflower blue, that would apply to, let's take a look, both of them. But if I want the second one to be different from the first one, now I've got a little bit of a conundrum. How do I differentiate between two H1 tags? I can't really, not with just CSS, right? Just by referring to the tag name in the CSS. So I'm going to add a special attribute to one of these. And let's call it, let's add that attribute here to the second one. Greeting. So this is the class attribute, and it's used primarily for styling. And so we will use it for that now. So I'm going to add another style just below my H1 styles. And so I want to refer to the thing that has a class, greeting. So let's go with greeting. I want you to notice what I did there, and that is I prefixed the name greeting with a dot. And this tells CSS, you know what, I want you to find the thing in the web page that has a class name, greeting. So when you see a dot at the beginning, you know that there's going to be some HTML somewhere in the page that has class that is equal to greeting. So let's go with the color can be fuchsia, because why not? Did I mention I'm not a designer? Yeah, I know. It's going to look terrible. It's cool though. It's totally cool. Oh, apologies to all of you out there whose eyes are burning. You can blame me. It's fine. So we have two H1 tags. One of them has a class attribute, and we've set it to greeting. And that's how we were able to say, you know what, for all H1s, cornflower blue. Oh, but for anything with a class of greeting, fuchsia, totally fuchsia. All right. I'm gonna delete this for now, and I'm gonna get rid of the greeting H1 tag. What I would really like to address is this problematic, gigantic logo. That's no good. So what are we going to do about this? So besides being able to control colors and fonts, you can also control the size of things. And so we're going to do that now. Let's add, I'm going to go with an H2 tag, and I'm going to give it the class logo. And what I would like to do, I'm just going to cut my image. I'm going to paste it here inside the H2. That is, I'm going to move the image tag and I'm going to put it sandwiched in between my opening and closing H2 tag. And then I'm going to put some styles on this. So the styles I'm going to use, let's go with, you know, I don't actually want the H1 to be cornflower blue, so I'm going to nix that for right now. You are fine to keep it if you like cornflower blue. And if you liked fuchsia, you can go with fuchsia. No judgment. It's totally fine. Logo. So again, this is me saying in my styles that for a thing that has the class name logo, let's do some stuff to it. Let's change the way that the browser displays it. So I'm going to set the width to, I think about 150 pixels. And let's switch back to the browser and see if that had any effect. I'm a big fan of making tiny, tiny changes and then seeing if they had the effect that I want, you know, and if they don't, then I just keep on keep on working on it. So returning to index.html, I think that what I need to do is I'm going to say that, well, not only for the thing with class name logo, I'm going to say that, okay, for an image that is nested inside of something with class name logo, let's do something with that. So I'm going to set the width to 100%. So now we have an interesting relationship between the image tag and the h2 tag. The image tag is being told, all right, I want you to be as wide as possible, but it's inside the h2 tag, or rather specifically the thing with the class name logo. Class name logo is the thing wrapping around the image, and it is being constrained to 150 pixels in width. That's what this bit of CSS means. I'm saying I want it to have a width, and I'm going to designate that it be 150 pixels wide. And let's see what happens. Yay! Cool. All right. So one of the tricks here is that when you're working with images, you can set the height and the width of the image itself, but it's really best to say, I'm either going to set the height to 100% or the width to 100%, but really I'm going to control the actual size of the image by setting its container, that is, the thing that it's nested inside, its container to a specific width. It gives me some amount of flexibility, so now I can say, maybe I really wanted the logo to be, let me show you the change that I'm making. Maybe I really wanted the logo not to be 150 pixels wide, but 180 pixels wide. Then, switching back to the browser, when you refresh, you should notice that it's slightly larger. So let's take a look now. Reload, a little bit bigger. All right, that's cool. I'm going to stick with that. But again, that pattern, super useful in CSS, particularly when you're laying out stuff that needs to have specific proportions like images. Set one of its dimensions, either width or height, to 100%. Then be done with it. Go to the thing that it's nested inside, and then actually specify a concrete width, not some percentage, but like a pixel value. So like we've done here, 180 pixels. Awesome. One more thing. Let's take a look at the browser. Before we go any further, I'm not in love with the fact that everything's all the way to the left. I'm going to center all the things. Let's do that. Okay, so everything shoved over to the left, not awesome. If I want to center that, let's do this. Let's wrap everything that we've got. I'm going to wrap it in another kind of tag. This is a div tag. It's super generic. It doesn't actually have any meaning. It's just like some sort of logical division or conceptual division in your HTML. It's like, I want to group this stuff together, but it's not a paragraph, it's not an image, it's not a heading, it's not any of these things. But what they're super useful for is attaching a class name. So I'm going to attach the class name container. That doesn't have any special meaning. None of the things that you put in a class attribute, none of this is special to HTML or CSS. This is whatever you want it to be. All you need to do is take it and use it in your styles. So I'm going to now say, if I want to refer to the class name container, say dot and then container, open, close, curly braces, and then let's say text align center. After making that code change, where I wrapped everything inside the body with an opening div tag that has the class container, and then ending it just before the closing body tag with closing div tag, we've wrapped it all up, and so now in my CSS we say dot container, so the element with class name container, text align center, save it, go back to the browser, reload. Ooh, almost. We got the welcome to DigitalCrafts to center, but that image, now it's fine. It's fine. This one is pretty straightforward to take care of. Another trick when you are doing web pages, a lot of times you're going to want to center stuff. Sometimes it just doesn't want to center. So specifically, this logo is like, nope, I'm going to be over to the left. You know what, logo? You're actually not. You're going to go over to the side. Margin 0 auto. I don't want to change where it is vertically on the screen, but everywhere else, like I want it to, you can imagine that this auto is saying, all right, in all other directions, left and right of you to the bottom, as much as possible, I want you to stretch like your invisible arms out to the side. I want you to push yourself. Upon returning to the browser, you reload. Now, the logo has pushed itself equally from both sides. Generally, this trick is only going to work for the left and to the right. It's not really going to push anything to the bottom. So this is just the shorthand that I've grown accustomed to. All right, so those were 2 tricks for centering some of your content. Most of your text is going to be handled by text align center. And I put that on the div that's wrapping around all of this stuff that I've got highlighted now. Except for that pesky logo, which I had to add margin 0 auto. And it did the trick. So, excellent. So, those are some basics about CSS. We're now going to jump over to using the third and most powerful piece in your browser programming toolkit. When I say browser programming, yes, I mean creating web pages, but they can be so much more than just pages that display information. You can have some interactivity. And we're going to do that now with a fairly simple chatbot. It's not actually like artificially intelligent. It just seems like it's doing some stuff. And that's that will be totally good. Totally good. All right. The next thing that I would like for you to do, I'd like for you to go down to the bottom of your, down to that div that you just added. I want you to put your cursor to the right, hit enter a couple of times. Next, you're going to add another kind of script, and this is another kind of tag. This is the script tag. So you can use your tab completion if you've got it. But the most important part, besides just having an opening script tag and a closing script tag, is to have a source attribute. Now, when we did an anchor tag, there was an href attribute that referred to the web page that we're going to. When you used an image tag, you had a source attribute that referred to the image that you want to display. This is a script tag, and this is how we tell the web page, you know what, I would like to attach some JavaScript. Here's where you can find it. So I'm going to call I'm just going to say, yeah, we will have a JavaScript file. It will be called chat.js. And that's what I'm going to put as the attribute source. Quick note, that source attribute should go in the beginning, the opening script tag. You can't put it in the closing script tag. You can't put that in the middle. And in fact, If you have a source attribute, you should not have anything else in here. The script tag's a little funky that way. They kind of require you to have an opening and a closing tag, even though most of the time you're just going to set the source attribute. So now we've saved that. We're not ready to reload yet because, well, we don't have the chat.js. We don't have that file yet. Now, I did overlook a couple of things. I'm gonna step back for just a second. The whole idea is for us to have a place where you can type in a message, a button that we can hit, so that it adds to a chat message to the screen. So I think that before we actually dive into JavaScript, we're going to add some, let's add some more markup. So right here, inside of our container div, and I'm calling it the container div because it has the class name container. A lot of times it's useful to differentiate, like just in conversation when you're thinking to yourself about your code, just know that, oh, okay, so this is the logo element. That's my H2. This is my container element, because that's my intention with it. That's another thing that's good about class names, is that you can be a little bit more descriptive than just div or H2. That said, let's use another div, shall we? So this is going right after the closing H2 tag. So just after that, I'm going to add another div, and we're going to give it the class name Chatbox. Another rule of thumb, every time you create an opening tag, you should just go ahead and create the closing tag. Do that on the next line, and then move your cursor back up to the end of the beginning tag, and then you can just hit enter, make a line break. That way you're never in danger of, oh, I forgot that closing tag. A lot of times your web pages can get really out of whack if you leave out the closing tag. Sometimes it can be really hard to figure out where they should go. So I like to add my tags in pairs, opening and closing. So this chat box is going to wrap around our entire, all of our chat stuff on the screen. Let's do 2 more divs. Div class. This is one that's going to hold the message area, like all of the messages, so I'm going to call it message area. That's my class name. And then I immediately add my closing tag. I'm not going to put any stuff in here right now. I'm just going to say I'm going to use JavaScript to dynamically place content in there. So we'll leave that as is. The next thing that we're going to add, this is going to be a div. I'm going to give it the class name input area. I don't know why I'm calling everything area today. It's fine. It's totally fine. So add my opening tag, my closing tag. Let's review really quickly what we've got, what we've just added to the HTML. So there is a div tag whose class is chatbox. For me, I put chat-box. I like to be able to easily scan over my class names, and the dash gives me a nice separator. I can't have a space in there. These are now 2 separate class names. So my class name is actually chat-box. Inside of that div, I've got 2 more divs. The first one is a div with the class message area. And that one I'm leaving empty. Immediately after that is another div, and the class for that one is input area. I am going to put some stuff in here. So I've got the place where I'm going to draw, where my chat messages will be drawn. But now I want to add in an input element and a button. It's going to say send. So now let's just save that and then take a look in the browser and see what that looks like. So I've saved my HTML file, I'm reloading, and there it is. Here's a little text input. When I click send, nothing happens right now, and that's fine because we haven't really added our JavaScript. I just wanted to make sure that the various pieces of the web page were already in place before we start adding our JavaScript. Sometimes you will see HTML that this is going to look weird, right? This is this input tag. It looks like an opening tag that is missing its closing tag. So what I like to do is put a space after the tag name. This is inside the angle brackets. I put a space after the tag name, and then I put a slash right before the last angle bracket. So all on one line, that is the input tag, and it has the slash there. You'll hear this referred to as a self-closing tag, and this is one way to write your HTML for a tag that's not going to wrap around any content. Right? We're not going to sandwich more stuff in between an opening and closing input tag. We just want it to be there, and this is going to tell the browser, I need you to create an element that is, well, to you and me, it's a text field. But in HTML, it's known as an input tag. So whether you close it or not, as you saw earlier, it still looks right. It still behaves the way that it's supposed to. But to my eye, I prefer that my tags either have closing tags or that they be self-closing. It's just a good practice. Okay, what was that? Oh, right. I think that we're going to write some JavaScript now. Woohoo! So I'm going to return to the File Explorer in my text editor. And when I mouse over the name of my folder, I can see that I can create a new file. If you're using a different text editor, this will be different for you. You might go up to the File menu and then say New File. But this has a nice little shortcut where I just click this icon. The first icon next to the name of my folder, and it says, well, what would you like to call that? And I'm going to call it chat.js, because that's what I put in my HTML as the value for the source attribute of my script tag, chat.js. And then I just hit enter. It finishes naming the file, and then you can see that my text editor has switched over and says, here you go. You are ready to start adding in your JavaScript code. Thank you, text editor. Thank you. So if you are brand new to JavaScript, if you're brand new to writing code of any kind, this is probably going to seem a little bit weird, but that's totally fine. Anytime you're learning something new, it's supposed to feel weird. That is the feeling of your brain literally changing, like as it is absorbing completely foreign information. The best thing to do is just accept the fact that it's going to feel uncomfortable and just start to get used to, just get like familiar with, this new stuff that you're learning. Over time, it becomes second nature. Eventually, you do have to practice that. All right. So here's what I want to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write some comments in here. Comments are things that you can put in your code that's for you to read. The computer, it literally ignores them. And the way that you write a comment in JavaScript is // There are some other ways to write comments, but this one is quick and easy. It's just // It's the key where the question mark is. So I'm just gonna tell myself what I want. I want to be able to use the input text, click the button, and write to the message area. All right. Cool. So we're going to start with that. Other things I want to do, I don't know, that's enough. Those are three pretty big tasks. Now, if I want to use stuff that's in the HTML, like how do I get my code to refer to stuff that's on the web page? It's a great question. So the first thing that you're going to need, the most poorly named concept in programming, in my opinion, is the word variable. But we're going to set up some variables. Really, you really should think of these, they're more like labels. This is labels for stuff. So they're like sticky notes, or if you go to a meetup and everybody's wearing a name tag, you need a way to refer to a thing. That's what variables are. They're just names that you create, and you just stick them to stuff. You can stick them to different kinds of values like numbers or words and paragraphs, that sort of thing. But for us, we're going to put some labels on things that are on the web page. There are several ways to create variables in JavaScript. I know somebody on the Twitch chat asked about this. Now, traditionally, you would say something like var my name Twix. So this is a perfectly fine way to create variables. Now, anywhere I want to use the text Chris, I can, instead of do the whole name, instead of writing out my whole name every time I want to refer to that bit of text, I can just refer to the variable my name. And so this is me essentially in my own code creating a shortcut for a thing that I don't want to have to type out longhand over and over and over. But in recent changes, when I say recent, last couple of years or so, recent changes to JavaScript, you don't have to use the var keyword. That's not the only way. Another way is to use the let keyword. Now, this is something that, you are not required to use the newfangled syntax. It kind of does the same thing. For our purposes, in this example, there is no difference. As you progress in your coding career, when you're doing more complicated JavaScript, there will be a difference. That is a topic for another virtual meetup. But just know that for really short JavaScript snippets like we're going to do here, let and var, basically the same thing. So I don't actually need to use my name. What I do need, I still need a reference to the input element, the button, and the message area. I know that I need some variables. I'm just going to say input elements. Notice that this is me saying, I know that I want to create a label. I don't know what to stick it on right now. So let button, let message area, and I'm terminating each line with a semicolon. That's me saying to the browser, this is one complete thought, and I'm going to start another one after this. Your code will not be broken if you leave the semicolons off, but it's very, very, very good practice to put your semicolons on there. Tell my students that like 5 times a day. Actually, they don't need to be told, but I like to tell them anyway, because sometimes I have to find something to nag them about. I really do. So, what do I want to assign these labels to? I don't know how to refer to, I don't know that there's a way to refer directly to a thing that's on the web page. I really wish that I could just ask the web page, can you get me that thing? Luckily, in JavaScript, you can. So if we look back at the HTML, this very first line, doc type, So that means that we are declaring that, we're telling the browser, hey, this is a document whose type is HTML. So this is a little hint that, well, if it's a document, maybe in JavaScript, there's a way to access that document. And luckily there is. Your JavaScript code has been provided a number of things that they're just there for you to use. One of them is the document object. So don't let the word object scare you. It basically just means it's a thing that you can provide it to you that you can ask for other things. Specifically, this is the web page, or rather document represents the web page, and now I can ask it to go get stuff that it has drawn to the screen, which is kind of cool. Now, the code for that, for asking for a thing on the screen, is to say document.query selector. Okay, so that's what am I typing? That's super weird. Not necessarily. Not when I feed it this bit of text. So see this input? I'm going to switch back to index.html. I'm going to say, hey web page, give me access to this thing, which is an input. So by using I can use its tag name in quotes and see the opening and closing parentheses. I like to think of it as a mouth. I'm feeding this text to query selector. I'm saying, documents, I want you to find me a thing whose tag name is input. And that's what query selector will do for you. So this will give me a reference to that text input. I can do the same thing with button. Document, will you go get me the thing that is a button, please, that has a tag name button? Now, some of you might be thinking, what if you have more than one button on the screen? Well, that's a great question, and I will show you the solution to that by referring to the message area. Now, for this app, there is only one button, but very much like the situation we encountered earlier where we had multiple H1s, we needed to differentiate them. The message area, referring back to the index.html, whoa, the message area is a div. Look how many divs we have. Too many divs. What's different about these divs? Like, what thing differentiates them? The only thing that's really differentiating them, as far as we're concerned, is the class name. So it would be really, really handy if instead of referring to the tag name, we could refer to the class name. So I'm going to do that now, query selector. What am I going to put in between the quotes? Luckily, I can, just like I did with CSS, I can say dot and then the class name. So this is the power of query selectors. You can go and you can refer to things either by their tag name or the class name or other things like that. For now, we're going to stick to tag names and class names, though you do have other options if you have more advanced needs. Again, after you've worked along with me through this demo, you'll be ready to move on to other challenges, and you will likely have need for other ways of addressing things on your web page. So now I've got these labels, otherwise known as variables. Got these labels, now I can access the input element, I can access the button, I can access the message area. But what do I want to do with that? So I'm going to show you how to write some JavaScript that responds to user interaction. We're going to make something happen when the button is clicked. So we're going to say, button, I would like to add an event listener. What? You want to do a what? So in JavaScript for the browser, when you have a reference to something on the web page, like we do with input element, button, and message area, we can tell it, I would like to add a listener for an event. And this is you saying, when a particular thing happens, I want you to run this list of instructions. Buttons are things we can click. So we're going to listen for the click event. There are lots of different kinds of events. There's so much documentation. I usually keep a browser tab open as a list of them so I can refer to the list because it's too much for me to remember. The one that I always remember is click, because I do a lot of clicking. So first thing I say is, here's some text that has the name of the thing, the name of the event that I'm listening for. And here in my text editor, you can see that there are a number of different events that are available to me. Thanks, text editor. That's more than I need to know right now. But just know that you don't have to memorize this stuff. You should always, always, always refer to documentation. One of the core skills of being a developer is learning to read documentation and having the habit of referring to it. So here we go. We know the name of the event that we want to listen for. Next, we're going to give it a list of instructions. So to do that, I'm going to use this. So that looks, you might be thinking, like, what kind of weird, like, smiley emoji thing is that supposed to be? It's not. What it is, this is in JavaScript what's known as a function, specifically an arrow function. And the way that you write it, this is right after the comma, pair of parentheses. You got to have that. The equal sign, and then the greater than sign. I'm literally making a little arrow out of an equal and a greater than sign. To the right of the greater than sign, I've got open and close curly brace, and this is where I'm going to put my actual instructions. So let's do this. I'm going to write myself some more comments. Get the text from the input, add it to the screen. All right, cool. Now, getting the text from the input's pretty straightforward, but the second step, I might need a little help with that, but we'll cross that bridge momentarily. So let's create another variable, aka a label, for the text that's in the input element. So I'm going to say message text. That's going to be my variable name, and I want to assign it the value. Input element, tell me what value, like what did the user type in there. So that's how I get a reference to the value that the user has typed. Cool. Now adding it to the screen, there's a lot of stuff that's about to happen here. So I'm going to switch over and I'm going to say, that's more code than I want to write in that spot. Let's do this. Let's say, let's create another function called add message. And so this is me giving a label to a function. Again, open, close parens, then our little arrow, which is equal and then greater than, and then open, close curly brace. Now, functions are useful because you can say, oh, do you ever play Mad Libs? Better question. Have you heard of form letters? So this kind of like, functions are kind of like form letters. You have blanks for things like hello, first name, last name. We would like to spam you about something super useful. It's that concept. You have a bunch of stuff that's not going to change, and you have a couple of slots where things will change. So we're going to say that we want to add message, but what we want to change is the text. The process for adding a message is going to be the same no matter what the text is. So we're going to put all of that into a function, and every time we use this function, and that's what a function is, it's a list of reusable steps, we're just going to say, do all those steps, but for this text. Oh, do all these steps, but for this other text. And so you can reuse that process over and over. So we're going to say let message. So the document object, let's write this out in plain English. Create a paragraph element. Set its text to well, I'll tell you that whatever we put in the parentheses for a function, that's called an argument. That's the configurable part that gets handed to the add message function. Set its text to the text argument. Then add it to the message area. Okay. We're going to build out this function. Then we're going to use it right here where I've got the comment, add it to the screen. Because let's think about that. Every time the button is clicked, the user has typed something different into the input element. So we're going to grab that value out, assign the label message text, and then for that specific text that the user has entered, we want to reuse the process of adding a message to the screen, where the only difference is, the actual message text. Okay, all right. So I'm just gonna follow along with the comments that I've created. So we're gonna say let message be document. Document, will you do a thing for me? Will you please create an element? Why am I doing this? Why can't I just write some HTML? Well, that's the thing. Your HTML it's just in a file. That's not very useful for a chat application. You can't just keep on changing the HTML and reloading the page. That's not really like a chat experience. We want to load the page once, which means we load the HTML once, but we want the JavaScript to be able to update what is on that web page as the user is interacting with it. So first, so that's why we have the ability in JavaScript to create the same kinds of things that you would specify with HTML. So there is this is us creating a paragraph element. And now I'm going to set its text. The way that I do that is by saying its .text content should be assigned text. What do I mean by this? See this thing that's on the right-hand side of the equal? We're not saying equality. I really wish that this looked more like this. I'm putting text, this value, into the thing on the left-hand side of the equal. That's what I'm really doing. But for whatever reason, the people who designed JavaScript didn't ask me, so it doesn't look like a little rocket or an arrow in the other direction. It's just an equal sign. So I like to read this as message.textContent. That is the text content of the message variable is assigned text. And I know that text is the thing that got passed in as an argument. So that's how developers would refer to this. Text is a value that is passed in as an argument. The names that I put here in between the parentheses of a function, those also, like class names, don't have any special meaning. Those can be whatever I want, as long as it's meaningful to me, right? This is just a label that I'm creating on the fly as the function gets used. So I'm going to take that, and that's going to go down here on line 14, on the right-hand side of the equal sign. I always think of this as assignment. I'm assigning text to this slot. I'm saying whatever value is here in text, I'm going to put it in message.textContent. So finally, we're going to say message area. I want you to add a thing. In JavaScript terms, that is append child. So append child, what do we want to append? Message. Cool. So this is my add message function. It's complete. I fulfilled the 3 things that I needed to do based on the comments I wrote earlier. So now I'm ready to use add message. Right here at the end of my button.addEventListener click, we're just going to say add message, message text. Okay. So I'm going to save that. That was a lot of code. That was a lot more code than I would have liked to have written without checking it out in the browser, but that's cool. Totally fine. I'm returning now to the browser, and I'm reloading. I'm going to say, hi. And then I'm going to click send. Ooh, hello. How are you? Send. That's pretty cool, but it feels a lot like I'm talking to myself. Which, yes, I know I am, but, you know, that's why build a chatbot if it's not going to chat with you? So, all right, another a quick little thing. I kind of want to clear out this value. This is kind of a pain for me to have to manually erase and say, hey, send. So first I'm going to fix that. That's sort of an easy little fix that we can do very quickly. After I add the message to the screen, I'm going to say input element. So this is inside of my list of instructions that I'm associating with the button click. So that list of instructions, the way you specify a list of instructions in JavaScript is to use a function. That's what we're doing now. We're saying input, at the end of that function, we say input element.value. I want you to be nothing. So that's text, right? I'm using quotes, but there's nothing in it. Another name for text in JavaScript is to say string. It's like a string of letters. So I'm setting input.value to an empty string, that is quotes with nothing in it. And I would like to confirm that that did a thing. Switch back to the browser, reload. Hey. Ooh. It totally works. Awesome. So now pop back over to the browser. Now we're going to add the final element, which is to, you know, have the robot talk to us. What I want to do is, let's say that I'm going to add messages by the robot. The robot's going to add messages, and I want those to be styled a little bit differently. So I'm going to add, we're just going to add a class to our CSS.roboText. That's what I'm going to call it. We'll set the color to dark green, because why not? And we're going to change the font style. We're going to say it's going to be italic. We're not going to make any other changes to the HTML. That's all I wanted to do was say, can you paint the robot text in a slightly different style? Thanks. Okay. So here we go. We're going to do this. I'm going to say, let's have some robot answers. Robot answers be. Now I want to make a list of things, and with that, to do that, I use square brackets. That's called an array. I don't know why it's not called a list, but it's not. Welcome, exclamation. How are you today? Question mark. And I'm going to cheat. I have a bunch of these already ready, not a bunch, but a few. I'm just going to paste those in. Now, an array uses square brackets, and it's going to have a bunch of values. You just separate them with commas. And so the way that you refer to individual elements in an array is with, you can think of them as like seat numbers on a bus, right? So this would be welcome is in the first seat, then how are you in the second seat, do you like cats is in the third seat, except in JavaScript, seat numbers start with 0. So I'm going to say let current answer be 0. So that means that what I'm planning on doing is saying every time the robot answers, it gets ready to answer the next time by grabbing a reference to the next one, the next answer in its list of canned answers. It's not an AI. It's really not that smart at all, but we don't judge. Okay. So let's do this. We're going to write another function, let robot, I can spell, I really can't, robot response be a function. So I'm going to use my arrow function syntax. I'm going to say let message be robot answers bracket current answer. Okay. And so this is me saying in my list of robot answers, grab me the thing at seat number, whatever current answer refers to. So you can understand this to start off with seat number 0 of robot answers. And so the very first time we use robot response, the value of message will be welcome. So now that we've got that, let's add message. Oh, but I need a way to make sure that this paragraph tag has the class name robotext. It sounds like I want to make this add message function a little bit more configurable. The easiest way to do that is to add another argument. So I'm going to say, let's pass in the class name. And now we're going to say message, get rid of some of these line breaks so it's easier to see what's going on. Add custom class name. So message.setAttribute. Remember, all those things in HTML like source, href, alt, those are all attributes, and I can programmatically set them from JavaScript. So here I'm saying, for my paragraph, I want to set the attribute class to whatever got passed in with the label and got labeled class name. So you can think of this as a slot. As soon as something jumps through that slot, you slap a label on it, then anywhere inside of your function you can refer to that value by referring to the label. So now we've made it so add message takes a piece of text and also a class name. And so here, when my robot responds, I want to pass in robotext. So see how this matches up? When I call add message, my robot answer for my list gets the label message, and then using that label, I drop that robot answer, that specific robot answer, in through the first slot of my add message function. For the second slot of my add message function, I'm going to drop in the string robotext. Add message is going to use the text, that thing in the first slot, slap the label text on it, and then use it for the text content of my paragraph. It's going to use that second argument, whatever the value is, it doesn't know. It's just like, I don't know, whatever's got this label class name. It's just going to drop that in as what I'm setting the class attribute of my paragraph to. And so the next thing that I need to do is I'm going to say, all right, I already used that answer, so let's say the current answer, which is a number, is going to be current answer plus 1. This is me saying, like, if it's a 0, I want to make it a 1. If it's a 1, Let's make it a 2. So I'm just reassigning. I'm reassigning the label current answer to be whatever the current the value of current answer is plus 1. But I know that I might go over, so I want to reset current answer. Notice I'm using double equals. So this is not assignment anymore. This is me saying, oh, I would like to compare current answer to robot answers. That's my list of values, otherwise known as an array. Let's see if we have reached like the length, like the max. If so, let's reset. So that's my robot response. And finally, after I click to add my message, I'm going to ask the browser, could you do a thing, but maybe wait just a sec? Robot, I want you to run robot response, but I want you to wait like, I don't know, 1200 milliseconds before you do anything. All right. Am I feeling lucky? I don't know. Yes, I do. Here we go. Let's do this. Got our chat.js, switch back over to the browser, and we'll reload. We'll say, hello? Oh, welcome. Oh, hi. Oh, yeah. I'm good. Thanks. Oh, well. Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. Great. Let's be buddies. Okay, bye. Okay, and at this point, the chatbot has reset itself. And I could continue this conversation, but I'm pretty sure you know how this is going to go. So, quick recap. That was a whirlwind tour of many technologies. So there was HTML, and which is how you structure the content of your web page. CSS, you got a little taste of, and this is how you get the browser to draw things in a particular way. You know, besides colors and fonts, you can also do background images, background colors, so many things, and finally, you used JavaScript to create this interaction. And while, yeah, you're not gonna, it's not necessarily going to fool anyone into thinking there's a real human back there. It does kind of, it interacts like there is something on the other side chatting. Who knows? I don't know. Anyhow, I hope that you enjoyed the virtual meetup. Do let me know if you have any questions. And so there was a question from the audience, how do I make it intelligent? That's an awesome question, and there's so many different ways to approach that. Some things that you could look at. One thing that I might recommend is you could start Googling something called machine learning. So there's that. That's if you wanted to analyze a lot of conversation, like write programs that analyze conversations to figure out what are and aren't appropriate responses. That would be a massive undertaking. Let's see. You could simply build out your list of answers, and you could do different sorts of checks to say, well, if they put in these particular keywords in their input, then I'm going to pull from this list of possible responses. So essentially you end up with basically just, this is a lot more manual work that will get you results a bit quicker than doing a deep dive into machine learning. You could also, you could wire this up to some sort of a back-end service. So for example, there are different voice recognition services. Very famously, there's Alexa. So you could create a web interface to an Alexa program that you write, and it kind of handles a lot of the conversation intelligence for you. So those are just a couple of ideas, but awesome question, and potentially the topic for a future virtual meetup. I am myself very, not only am I interested in cats, but also chatbots, and particularly ones that are almost seemingly intelligent. So yeah, I like it. Be on the lookout.
How do you end the robot?
Great question. So what we could do, so this one is easier than, say, trying to make it artificially intelligent. Here's what we could do. So this bit of code, I'm going to put the comment marks at the beginning, and because I want to remember that this was here. And what I'm going to do is, up at the very top, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, if we're basically at the end, what I want to do is I'm going to put this keyword in here that's return. This basically means don't do anything else. Let's leave the function. The function will exit. And I'm now going to have a very impolite conversation with my chatbot. So that's kind of the end of it. No matter what I type now, the robot has basically said, peace out, I'm done, bye. Oh, hang on, sorry. This is the what's happening in the browser. I'm going to shorten my screen a little bit to make sure that the scrolling works. What I wanted to demonstrate was making that change to the code made it so the last thing that the robot does is say the final thing in the list, and then it's just done. I can keep on typing, and there is no more. And the quick change that we made to the code was right here at the top of robot response. We're now doing our check at the beginning. Where we're saying, all right, if we've hit the end, let's just be done. Doesn't matter how many times I call robot response, nothing else is going to happen if I've reached this condition where the current answer is equal to the length of the robot answers list. All right, everybody. Thank you again for joining the DigitalCrafts virtual meetup. I hope you enjoyed it. The video in its entirety, this virtual meetup, will be posted as a YouTube video soon. So we'll be doing another one of these next week. Next month, not next week. Just kidding about next week. Next month, October. So be on the lookout. Thanks again.